unfortunately, Chase Elliott has an injury. Snowboarding, there's a lot of talk about, oh man, what should drivers be limited on what they can do? And I got a very brief opinion on that.
I want to hear it.
Really? Okay.
I really do. I didn't even text you this weekend because
right.
I wanted to hear it on the show.
Yeah. So, all right, Chase is snowboarding. Great. He's apparently very good at it. And I don't know what happened. I have no details, but he's got he injures his leg. So he's out of the car he's got a non-weight bearing injury that it's going to take some time, right? And so there's no perfect timeline. They will just go week to week with trying to put drivers in that car that makes sense. And until Chase is ready to go, right? He'll go probably practice somewhere, drive a race car somewhere, and say, hey, yeah, I feel pretty good. And so when that happens is when it happens. But I think that the responsibility of the risks a driver takes outside of his role is his choice or her choice, all right? If you want to go do things, and you assume that risk, and you hopefully somebody in your camp's going, look, man, I know you want to do this. Here's what you're getting paid by the Cup team. Here is the insurance coverage that we have that would handle any kind of injury or worse. And so, if there's an injury that limits you for a couple weeks, this is the repercussions. If there's an injury that knocks you out of driving a race car entirely, here is the repercussions. So hopefully there's somebody that's letting this driver know these are all the things that get triggered when certain dominoes fall. And as long as you have that information and understand all of those repercussions, go do whatever you want to do. And, there's some things that I wanted to do and I did do. There's some things I didn't do. For example, I had just signed a new deal with Rick Hendrick in 2008. Just signed one. I was making substantially more money than I ever made at DEI. And so this is a very, very brand new thing. I just got a big raise, right? Everybody put yourself in this situation, right? You've been working a job. You get a new job with a substantial raise, and then you go on a trip with your family to Aspen. I'm not a skier, not good at it, hardly ever done it. Most everybody that went wanted to ski. I was willing to go give it a try. And somebody in my group said, hey, man, you just signed that new thing. You don't know how to ski. Maybe this ain't for you. Maybe this trip you don't do it. Now, I ended up going and skiing years later. But in that moment, maybe it was a good choice not to ski. But that's a personal choice and always should be a personal choice. That's my opinion about it. So hopefully there's people that are around each driver making sure they have all that information that they need. If you get injured today, here's what happens. Now, do you want to go do the thing? If you do, go do it. But just know going forward, that's the risk you take. I think that's fair enough. What do you think, Mike?
Well, I agree with you, but you say that they know the risks involved. And as it pertains to the conversation about Chase Elliott, I'm curious, and I was going to ask you this. The waiver sort of eliminates that risk because now they have a pathway to make the playoffs without and still be able to miss some races. My question is there other repercussions? In other words, and I know you could probably only speak to your deal, but aside from losing points, if you would have gone skiing and you would have injured yourself, you would have lost points and you would have lost seat time. Would you have also lost money?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I can't be sure. I can't sit here right now and say I would have lost this, but how disappointing would it have been for Rick Hendrick to have just hired me And for me to go on this trip immediately after that and come back and go, hey, man, I got a broke leg.
No, I completely agree with that. I guess the point I'm trying to make is that I am of the belief, and just like you are, that these guys need to live their life, and we shouldn't go hamper it. But I also understand why you wouldn't want them to. And Rick Hendrick would be the example of that. And Rick Hendrick is the one that now doesn't have his show pony in the 9 car. And sure, they've got a pathway to a playoff, but I'm wondering if there's repercussions for drivers. You should be able to live your life, but you also know that there's other repercussions that if you choose to go skiing or you choose to go racing in a dirt race or you choose to go do this, there's repercussions that aren't just can you make the playoffs? Like,
I'm sure there are, Mike.
That's what I'm wondering.
Well, I'm sure that if you're not in the race, you can't make any money, right? And drivers are, we don't know the answer to what a contract looks like.
Right. And they're all different,
They are different. Guys getting paid a base salary, then he's probably in pretty decent shape even if he gets injured. But if a guy, like in the last couple of years of my contract, I was getting paid more off of race winnings. Mm-hmm. A big substantial part of my income was from what I got in the race, right? Or what the car won in the race. And if you do it that way, which I don't know how they do it these days, it's been enough times that there's probably a change, but that driver is going to be in a bit of trouble because he's not on the track competing. And maybe everybody's different. I don't go assume that risk thinking about the next race or the points in the next race or the championship at the end of the season or the playoffs. I don't think that those are the things that weigh on your mind. What weighs on your mind in making these decisions to go drive another race car somewhere else is the very long term. If I get injured and I'm out, for a substantial period of time, or I do something to myself that might might force my employer to question my ability going forward, right? You go out there and suffer a concussion, mm-hmm. That unfortunately has a bit of a stigma, tied to it. And so, those are the things that I worried about. If a broke ankle or a broke leg, that kind of thing can heal. Yes, you're going to miss some time. It might affect that particular season in a bad way, but that wasn't enough for me. And I don't know that it is enough for other drivers there's other things that are bigger that you worry about. It's much more like, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe some drivers are very, hey man, I can't do this or won't do this. I'm worried about the points. I'm worried about the playoffs. I'm worried about the championship. I thought larger, like I'm worried about how my employer feels.
I think that's an admirable thing to think about, and yet I don't know that all of them do.
It's not so much, hey man, it's more like, what do you think? What does my employer think? What does my advisors think?
Yeah.
What is, it's really all about how do they feel about this, and if something did happen, how would you feel, and how, you gauge the room, you read the room, and that would help you make your decision. But anyhow, we're getting into the weeds a little bit. I think that Chase should be able to go out there and do what he wants. He'll get this thing healed up. He'll come back strong. I think, I don't know. I think that Chase really, as unfortunate as this is, I think that in when we look back on Chase's career, I have a feeling that this is going to have a positive impact on his appreciation for his job. I think, how could it not, right? You get something taken from you that you love so much. He is going to come back hungrier, more determined, he is going to, he will probably really appreciate the opportunity, more than he ever did. And so I think that he will be a much better race car driver when he comes back. As unfortunate as the situation is, I mean, I'm always a silver lining kind of person trying to figure out, hey man, what's the good in this? What can be taken from this and used in a good way? I just feel like that this is going to impact him long term positively in terms of how he approaches his role as a race car driver. And, he's already damn good. And if this makes him just any better, I think it's a real possibility for that to happen.
Can I just say this? I've seen some emphatic opinions about this on both sides, right? And then the camp, I even saw Kyle Petty come out going, I cannot believe there's so many people that are against this medical waiver. And I saw his statement. And I understand where Kyle Petty's coming from, but I would assume, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, the argument against the waiver is only to say if you don't earn a spot in the playoffs, then, the right way, then you don't belong, much like the people that did not like that Kyle Busch years ago got a medical waiver and then end up winning the championship, having missed 10 or 11 races, right? Isn't that what happened? Isn't that the argument? And if it is the argument, I understand it. I do understand it. I just end up falling on, I want our sport to have the stars in the show when it matters. And even if it means that they're getting waivers and they didn't necessarily earn it the old traditional way. And I also think that you don't want to encourage people to race injured, because the concussions is one example. If you'd had Kurt Busch or Bowman last year racing with a concussion, those are way more severe consequences with that you just don't want to introduce. And Ricky Craven and other people have talked about racing injured before, and it's just not good. But I understand both sides of the argument. Am I understanding the counter right?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's part of it. I think another part of it is getting hurt in the car on track versus getting hurt outside.
Clearly, if you're getting hurt on the car on the track, that's not the issue.
Yeah.
It's when you're doing the extracurricular activities or potentially racing in other series that it's not part of your primary, that's not how you.
Yeah.
The example I've heard a lot is when Tony Stewart had that ATV accident as more of the comparison to what this is with Chase, more than like Kyle Busch's, but Kyle went on to win the championship, so I think that path is a lot easier.
Yeah, I'm sure that this has been talked around in circles in the public, but you have. I don't mind it. The waiver. This is the bigger conversation for me is set the rules before the game starts.
Amen to that.
We all play by those rules during the game. Never at one point during the middle of the game do the rules get changed. And if the waiver is described in a way that a driver that gets injured outside of the race car is allowed the waiver just in the same right that someone's injured inside the car, then fine. I have no problem with that. And not that NASCAR is, I don't like when something happens in the middle of the season and we've got and they set a new precedent midstream, right? Mid race, mid season. I know things happen out of our control and unforeseen things happen that we never would imagine, and we have to adjust on the fly. But I don't have a problem with it. Players in other sports injure themselves in all types of ways off the field. They can come back and be a part of that team when they're healthy and go on to the championship game if that's the success that they have. And they're I guess it's no different. For Chase Elliott. So I'm just interested to watch him come back. And how I think the one thing that I'm looking forward to is hearing his remarks when he's ready to sit down in front of the media and talk about his experience and when he starts to get back on the track and the interviews around the car and before and after the race and before and after performance. I'm looking forward to hearing his comments, and seeing how this has affected him.